It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good... Oh, hello, folks. Welcome to Jack Reviews Musicals. My name is Jack, and I'm a musical theater superfan based in St. Louis, Missouri, and this is my YouTube channel where I share my thoughts on all of the musical productions I see in the area. In this video, I will be sharing my thoughts on Stage of St. Louis's now closed production of Austen's Pride, which played July 25th through August 24th of 2025. Austen's Pride marks the second time in the over 30-year history of Stage of St. Louis that they presented a musical that was in its pre-Broadway tryout stage. The first one was The Karate Kid, which you can read my review for on jackreviewsmusicals.com if you want to see why it hasn't really moved farther along to Broadway since then. Stage's production of Austen's Pride, which was created by Lindsay Warren Baker and Amanda Jacobs, is just one of several tryouts in regional theaters across the United States, in the hopes that all of these productions will refine and reshape the material to make it as good as it can before it hits the Great White Way. It's actually a really fitting approach to improve this material in regards to what it's actually about. This national tryout is actually happening on the 250th birth year of the show's subject, celebrated English novelist Jane Austen. And Austen's Pride is an adaptation of her most beloved work, the romance Pride and Prejudice. And this year it has certainly become beloved to me. I own a physical copy of the book, which is actually a complete works collection of the 4 novels that were published when Jane Austen was alive. In preparation for writing this review, I had to watch the 2005 film adaptation starring Keira Knightley, and it's easily become one of my top 15 favorite movies that I have seen this year. The story of Pride and Prejudice is a Regency English enemies-to-lovers romance between the maiden Elizabeth Bennet and the gentleman Mr. Fitzwilliam Darcy. But it's a high-stakes enemies-to-lovers romance. Elizabeth comes from an upper-middle-class family with 4 sisters. Because women had very limited options during the Regency era, they had to marry a man with money or else become spinsters. So now there's a time crunch for Elizabeth to fall in love with Darcy, or at least try to. Because Jane Austen actually lived in this time and place, she wrote Pride and Prejudice as this very authentic, very timeless satire about the absurdity of classism and the arbitrariness of gender roles in English society, and is also a compelling drama at the same point. What makes Austen's Pride unique is that neither Elizabeth or Mr. Darcy are the protagonists. The protagonist of the show is Jane Austen herself. The show begins with Jane Austen and her sister Cassandra receiving the news that Jane's first novel, Sense and Sensibility, has become a bestseller. Not only that, but readers are raving about it. So much so that the publisher wants Jane to work on a new novel to meet reader demand. Problem is that Jane is a very shy author. She actually had to send in Sense and Sensibility anonymously to the publisher. So Jane is a bit stunned by this bit of information, and she struggles to think about how she could possibly top Sense and Sensibility, until Cassandra suggests that she revisits the first manuscript that Jane ever wrote, First Impressions. Jane agrees to revisit this manuscript partially to appease Cassandra, and partially to make the process of writing her follow-up novel more efficient. As Jane and Cassandra begin the process of editing the manuscript, the story comes to life on the stage around them. The characters and the locales taking shape as Jane re-sculpts them into the story that we know today. The characters even argue with Austen herself about word choices, story beat placements, and just how true to Austen's own life to make the plot. The concept of Austen's Pride is really nothing new. The idea of a musical taking place inside of a main character's head and having the story unfold around them, I've seen it before. Company, The Mad Ones, and even The Drowsy Chaperone, which is oddly enough the closest parallel to the show I can think of. But in Chaperone, the protagonist, the man in chair, uses an already existing in-universe musical to come to terms with his own identity. But in Austen's Pride, Jane has total control over this narrative that she's creating. She's literally making it up as she goes along and using the novel novel as a journey of self-discovery in her own right. I find stories like that really fascinating, about how when a creative person is making their art and it feels like the art is shaping the creator instead of the other way around. The musical Sunday in the Park with George does this. Another one of my favorite movies I watched this year, Portrait of a Lady on Fire, does this. It's a problem that's commonly expressed by creative types, myself included, and the fact that Austen's Pride addresses this is really compelling and gives more insight into who Austen was as a person. For example, at the end of Act 1, Austen is editing the iconic scene where Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy tell each other off for their respective flaws of Pride and Prejudice. But as she's writing it, Austen realizes that moment hits really close to home for her, reopening trauma that she would rather have had healed at this point. Literally, the final tableau of the first act is Jane throwing the manuscript to the ground in disgust. But in Act 2, Austen does come around to seeing the novel not necessarily as a way of moving on from her trauma, but rather finding a way to incorporate her trauma into her work in such a way that it brings her catharsis. In Act 2, the Austen sisters insert themselves as minor characters in the story to shift the tide of the ending. When Jane is editing the fallout of the elopement between Elizabeth's younger sister Lydia, who's not even 18, and the soldier Mr. George Wickham, a gambling addict of ill repute, the drama is treated very intensely, mirroring the intensity of Austen's emotional state when she wrote it first. If not unique, it's certainly an interesting way of portraying how a writer's personal life informs their work. If there was something that I would want to improve about the material, it would actually be the score itself. Many of the songs are quite good, and they stand up on their own. But the songs that grabbed me and invested me the most were the ones that focused on Jane Austen's personal and creative turmoil, like the Act 1 finale, Why, as well as the songs that musicalized certain story beats in Pride and Prejudice, with Jane Austen interjecting herself into them. For example, the Netherfield ball scene. There's quite a few songs in the show where it's just the Pride and Prejudice characters by themselves. I think those songs would have been better if the ones that came up in Act 1, Austen was more present lyrically with the characters singing the song, almost as a back and forth between the two. But then, as Austen starts to regain her control over the narrative in Act 2, that is when she allows the characters to really express themselves through their own solos. A great example of the show already doing that is its 11 o'clock number, Fine Eyes, Darcy's heartfelt confession of love for Elizabeth. As is, the score is still charming. The orchestrations are lush, lots of strings and woodwinds, vocal arrangements that make the cast of 13 actors feel like a full choir, and a lyrical quality that makes for a good match for Jane Austen's writing style and works in this format. Musical director Sheila Ramesh brings the score to life with elegance, grace, and a crystal clear sound. Engineered by sound designer Philip Peglow. The ballroom dancing and the musical staging by choreographer Lisa Shriver was energized and tightly coordinated, especially the constantly moving bodies during Lydia and Wickham's elopement. The direction by Igor Golden stages Austen's Pride very much like a black box space, using very little to switch not between just locations, but also characters and states of mind that Jane Austen is going through. The scenic design by Josh Zagan, for instance, features only a few permanent fixtures. The stage floor is completely black except for a wooden circle that serves as the floor of Austen's office. And hanging above that is a large ring light that shines down onto it, kept bright by lighting designer Jason Lyons. Beautifully beautifully rendered video backdrops, portraying the English countryside, which are kept hidden by a series of large black flats that slide across the stage, strategically revealing more and more sections of the video screen, until in the finale it is shown in all its glory. The costumes by Emily Rebholz and the wigs by Tommy Kurzman were crisp, not just for the elegant Regency fashions, but also for their simplicity, because they need to have a small cast portraying a large roster of characters. Olivia Hernandez is magnetic as Jane Austen herself. Her eyes are full of wonder as she's rediscovering the story. You feel the satisfaction she gets when she gets to take a word and just throw it away. And she makes the internalized conflict of being a troubled genius artist palpable. Hernandez has great moments of sisterhood with Danica Phelan as Cassandra, who makes this character the epitome of the supportive sibling who would go to the ends of the earth for their family. Hernandez also has fun interactions with Elizabeth, brought to life here by Delphi Boric, who makes Elizabeth's arc from hardened intellectual to softened romantic totally convincing. Dan Hoy is pitch perfect as Mr. Darcy, with an aloofness that makes for great chemistry with Delphi Boric's outgoing Elizabeth, eventually giving way to compelling vulnerability. The B-plot couple, Elizabeth's older sister Jane and Darcy's best friend Mr. Charles Bingley, were played by Addie Morales and Cole Thompson respectively, and they do a great job of making them the cute, charming couple they always were, with the giddiness that feels quite sincere. Lydia and Mr. Wickham are played by Kate Fahey and Michael Burrell, who effectively play up the awkwardness of a young couple who, even though they are young, their age gap is substantial and kinda creepy. Burrell also has a cameo as Austen's ex-fiancé who appears in flashback. Kevin Morrow gives a very book-accurate portrayal of Mr. Bennet, the Bennet family patriarch. Morrow plays Mr. Bennet with a smarmy nonchalantness, making his comments on the strange contradictions of femininity rather charming. Sally Wilford gives great performances of two characters that you love to hate. Mrs. Bennet, Mr. Bennet's wife, who is an insufferably tactless woman, she was great for comic relief, and Lady Catherine de Bourgh, Mr. Darcy's imperious aunt. Paul Castry plays Mr. Collins, a self-important, uppity man who tries to marry into the Bennet family, a process that ends with him being humiliated by Elizabeth, and Mr. Gardner, Mrs. Bennet's endearingly kind younger brother who helps his niece Elizabeth during her time of need. Mrs. Gardner is played with equal kindness by Sarah Ellis, who also plays the bookish, socially inept middle Bennet sister Mary, and Mr. Bingley's airheaded sister Carolyn. Rounding out the core cast is Callie Noack as the annoyingly childish youngest Bennet sister Kitty, and Mr. Darcy's charming younger sister Georgiana. So overall, I would say Austen's Pride is very close to perfection. I think after it completes its national tryout period, Lindsay Warren Baker and Amanda Jacobs will have gotten everything they needed to make the show ready for New York. I still think the show could have been better if Austen was a bit more domineering during Act 1, so that in Act 2 she could slowly let the characters take center stage, which is what I think they were trying to do in Act 2 already. Austen's Pride could be a contender in the canon of musicals about artists making art. As is, I was very impressed by Austen's Pride, and I am very much looking forward to seeing how its jump to Broadway follows through on its already evident promise. Did you see Stage of St. Louis's production of Austen's Pride? If so, what did you think about it? Whatever it is, whatever you think, comment below and let me know. If you enjoyed this review, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you don't want to miss any more St. Louis musical theater reviews coming very soon. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, long live the musical!